my job at Vegan Women's Summit is really empowering amazing women all around the world to build a kinder, more sustainable world in any way that we can. Folks like Kelly, like Crystal, we're working to bring women and all those who celebrate them together to help make the world just a little bit kinder place. So I'm excited to be here today. What I focus on is a little bit different than some of the speakers that are here. So we really work to empower women to help build the solutions in the world to help us create a little bit more of a plant-based world. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the plant-based space right now. I've got a few interesting things that I can share with you, talking about who is it that's getting interested in the plant-based space. What are some of the really interesting trends that we are seeing? Spoiler alert, it's going beyond just the Beyond Burger and the Impossible Burger. There's a lot of really cool trends that are on the horizon, all kinds of new products that are coming out. So want to pique your interest a little bit. Perhaps you're interested in building a plant-based product yourself. Perhaps you're interested as a consumer learning more about what's out there. And then of course, we'll get to some of the very, very cool new ingredients and the innovation in the health space as to what are the types of products that we're starting to see now, what cool ingredients are we going to be seeing in 2022 and beyond, and how are we starting to make even healthier plant-based products. So with that being said, I think we can go to it. So we're going to do the demographics, the trends, and then novel innovations and ingredients. So let's go to the first slide. So the state of plant-based demographics. So for folks that are joining from outside of the US and the UK or so, the majority of the statistics that I'll be sharing today are going to be based off of North America or the UK. I apologize. It's a little bit difficult for us to get statistics of globally what's going on because markets are so segmented. But generally speaking, a lot of what's going on in the UK is similar for all of Europe. And of course, what's going on in the US and Canada are very similar. So hopefully this should be applicable for all of you. So here's a very, very huge thing to kick off the conversation with. We now have, as of latest reporting, 6% of US consumers reporting being vegan. So I'm going to use the words vegan and plant-based interchangeably throughout today's conversation. But what we are talking about specifically for vegan is the same as a person with a plant-based diet, somebody that is not eating meat, seafood, eggs, in many circumstances, honey, and then of course, milk as well. So that's a 500% increase since 2014. It's just absolutely astronomical. It's really, really exciting to see so much change happening there. Another big push that we're seeing is flexitarians. I'm sure many of you that are joining today are folks that haven't perhaps taken on a fully plant-based diet, but you're starting to incorporate more and more plant-based products into your diet. What's really exciting for us to see is that nearly 2 out of 5 consumers in the US right now considers themselves to be a flexitarian, and even higher in Canada. So that means that these are folks that are trying to incorporate more plant-based foods into their diet. A lot of you that are starting off your January, you might be having that as your exact goal, especially now that it's Veganuary. And you are one of the fastest growing segments that we are now seeing of folks that are considering themselves plant curious or folks that are leaning towards a more plant-based diet. Another really interesting statistic for everyone, the leading group that are going vegan are African American adults. We'll talk a little bit more later on in today's conversation about why that is, but it's very, very exciting to see the Black population is the fastest growing vegan population in the US. We can go to the next slide. So who is it that is starting to eat a more plant-based diet and why? So I actually am just about to publish my first book in the space, The Future of Food is Female. And the Gen Z topic is one of the things that I got into in the book. And it's very interesting to see. So Gen Zers are the first demographic to grow up with mainstream climate change education. So if you compare the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation, when millennials were in school, less than 40% of all news outlets covered climate change affirming content, meaning talked about climate change as a real issue. For Gen Zers, however, 90% of outlets now cover climate change. That means that this is the very first generation to really have a robust education about what's going on in the environment. And that has shown really tremendous results in terms of what their diet patterns are. So Gen Zers are very, very likely to report the climate as the most important thing when it comes to what they value in their life and the impact that they have. So about 90% of Gen Zers report environment and sustainability as their most important issue. And the majority of Gen Zers see climate as a huge, huge driver of why they eat what they eat. So the majority of Gen Zers in a recent poll said that they plan to reduce their meat consumption or ditch it entirely for 2022. Very interesting to see. We can go to the next slide. And who else is going vegan? Well, baby boomers. Interestingly enough, baby boomers and Gen Xers, I know that we've got a wide swath of folks that are joining today. So I'd love to hear in the chat, where are you in your journey and what demographic are you in? But baby boomers are quickly becoming another one of the fastest growing populations. And their reason is a little bit different. So for many of you that are joining, health and getting a more nutritious diet and really making those types of lifestyle changes for wellness attributes is the reason you're here. That's actually one of the main reasons that a lot of baby boomers and folks kind of in middle generations are now deciding to go vegan. It's very interesting. In particular, as I'm sure will be covered today, there's a number of very common diseases that are prevalent in North America and beyond that are either put into remission or significantly alleviated by a plant-based diet. So Dr. Greger does a lot of research on this. He's a great resource, nutritionfacts.org. It's a nonprofit, and they have evidence that shows that both type 2 diabetes as well as coronary heart disease can both be reversed by a plant-based diet. Baby boomers, of course, are the leading generation facing some of those ailments. So more and more of them are starting to look into diet as a solution. We can go to the next chart. So plant-based trends. What are some of the cool things that we are seeing in the space? So I'm going to throw a bunch of interesting facts at you. If you're in the plant-based space, perhaps you work with your super or you're somebody that's working in the industry, this is where we're going to nerd out for a minute. I promise for everyone else, we won't get too deep into it, but here's a couple of the really cool trends that we are seeing. So first off, what is the better search term to use if you're looking for products that are plant-based or vegan? Interestingly enough, this Instacart data, so keep in mind, this is data based off of North America, shows by far and large, vegan is the search term that has grown the most in terms of what folks are looking for. This is something that people debate quite a bit. A lot of brands say plant-based. I know you're super. There's a lot of plant-based where you guys are promoting different products. It's very fascinating to see that more and more users are starting to search for the term vegan instead. One of the reasons for this could be vegan tends to be a word that's universally understood, whereas for some folks, plant-based could mean mostly plants or entirely plants. It's a little bit more ambiguous. We can go to one of the next trends. So what is the #1 product that folks try first when they want to incorporate more plant-based products into their diet? Milk. I'm curious, for those of you that are interested in eating a more plant-based diet, what is the first product that you tried? For most people, it is almond milk. And now we're actually seeing oat milk growing pretty quickly. Soy milk, interestingly enough, is very, very common in different parts of the world. Obviously, places like Asia, soy milk is more of a mainstay. But we are seeing it start to drop with younger generations. And younger generations are more and more choosing just to consume almond milk, oat milk. I think the Oatly IPO that happened last year is a sure sign that alt milks are growing pretty quickly. So that's a really interesting trend we're seeing. Milk tends to be the first product that people want to try. Go to the next slide. So in following up with that, what is the first product that people try if they're going to try a plant-based product? Almond milk, by far and large, leads the pack. So folks like Silk, Almond Breeze, things like that tend to be a pretty popular first choice. There's also dairy cheeses that are growing pretty quickly. And then you can see tofu, veggie burgers, oat milk, so on and so forth. It is very interesting because more and more people of all backgrounds are starting to incorporate these plant-based products into their diet, whether or not they also are buying conventional animal products. We can go to the next slide. And so here's the last stat that I've got on what's going on in the industry. So if you're nerding out, don't worry. I'm sure we can share these statistics out after. But look at the categories that are growing the fastest in the plant-based space. So ice cream, creamer, yogurt, butter, cheese. You definitely see a lot of ice cream in the space. I think a lot of folks are used to seeing many different options when they go to the grocery store. But the ones that are really starting to grow are cheese and eggs. We'll talk about that in a moment and what that looks like from a nutrition perspective. But it's very exciting to see that those two products in particular are starting to have their moment. There's a lot of really cool clean health products that are coming out with eggs and cheese that are very interesting from a nutrition perspective because they can be even healthier in some regards than the conventional products that are already out there. So it's a little bit of a far cry from the early days of just Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers. Folks are really starting to look at the clean label approach. All right, we can go to a couple of the interesting innovations and ingredients that we're seeing. Feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A below or drop into the chat if anything piques your interest as we're chatting. This is the last piece of the presentation, and then we can go to questions. So, novel innovations and ingredients. One of the biggest trends that we are seeing for 2022 is high quality plant protein. So what does that mean? That means that for a lot of new consumers, they really, really value seeing clean label, sustainable, healthy proteins going into what they're eating. So a lot of those early plant-based products that you might have seen growing up or back in the day were soy-based or were based on other types of proteins that were more readily accessible and perhaps not as health promoting. I'm not going to get into the whole soy debate here today. I know lots of folks have different opinions on that, but one thing that is for sure is that diversity of plant proteins can certainly make a very healthy blend of nutritional aspects for folks. And here's a few of the cool new plant proteins we're starting to see rise right now. So fava beans. Whenever I think of fava beans, like, I think of when I was a kid. The idea of eating fava beans just sounds like, no, there's no way I'm interested in fava beans. But interestingly, it's becoming one of the hottest new proteins to use in cleaner label plant-based meats. The reason for that is that we have new innovations in technology that can allow for folks to remove some of the bitterness that we used to have with fava beans. If you remember that taste, if you were a kid that perhaps ate it because your mom used to make it for you, fava beans did not used to taste so great on their own. But fava beans are becoming increasingly used in different products. The Beyond Chicken, the new product that's just come out, actually heavily relied on fava beans. It's also a very sustainable crop to grow, and fava beans can be grown across both Europe and in North America. So there's a lot of different environments where you can grow this product. All right, let's go to the next one. Mung beans. So I'm curious, has anybody here heard about mung beans? Depending on where you are joining from, you might have a different perspective on this because the mung bean, although it's heavily used historically in Asian cuisine, really did not make a big impact in the market until recent years when a very famous product known as the Just Egg came out and was mung bean based. Mung beans just received regulatory approval in Europe. So if you are joining from Europe, you're going to start to see Just Egg and other mung bean products start to pop up. They are an ancient protein that is extremely healthy and has a lot of different health promoting aspects. And one of the things that's really exciting about them is that they can make a great clean protein that can closely resemble eggs and other products that folks are looking for when it comes to plant-based substitutions. So I expect to see a lot more mung beans coming out in coming years. And there's a lot of different countries that are starting to grow them because they are a sustainable, easy to grow crop, and they're creating some amazing opportunities around the world. And the last one, this one's going to be a little bit funny for y'all. Okay, sunflower protein. Has anybody here ever had sunflower protein? You've probably had sunflower seeds or sunflower oil, but increasingly, sunflower protein and a few other seeds, which I'll get into in a second, are starting to grow in popularity. So we're at this very fascinating point in time where we can actually use both technology and ancient wisdom together to identify the types of health promoting foods that we can make in the plant-based space. So there's a lot of companies out there that are now using artificial intelligence programs to go through all of these thousands of different interesting plant proteins that I'm mentioning today and try to identify what their attributes are to see how they could be used. Sunflower protein is one of those where we're going to see a huge growth over the next few years because it is a very healthy type of protein for folks to consume. It can be grown pretty easily, and it's already grown in mass for other uses in the world. So sunflower protein is one that we are expecting to see a lot of. There's also some other really cool things like watermelon seeds that we're starting to see. There's a number of new plant-based cheese companies that are actually starting to use seeds like watermelon seeds to produce some of their new products for 2022. One of the biggest themes that we're seeing for these next few years is how we can upcycle our products. So thinking about products that we're already using in some regard, but we're discarding some of the other pieces of them. How can we use those to make new healthy products? All right. So that is the quick update on what's going on in the plant-based space, some of the cool trends that you might be seeing. I have dropped in here. If you want to join Crystal and me in Los Angeles, we will be doing the Vegan Women's Summit in Los Angeles. It's the only destination for vegan women leaders all across the world. So if you want to come try 3 dozen brands, we have dropped an exclusive discount for you to join.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jenny. That's so interesting to me, like sunflower protein. Never heard of it before. Looking like it's happening in 2026. I'm going to get my hands on some of that. I need to go grow sunflowers or something. Yeah. So we have a couple questions for you. And I know one is about soy, so we don't need to bring up the big soy debate, but what have you seen in terms of trends as this new information comes out and this new research? So if a product is like soy milk, for example, maybe when it first came out, there wasn't a bunch of research on what soy does for our bodies. Do companies and people start to then change and adapt based on that?
So it really depends on who your consumer audience is, right? So one of the reasons why soy continues to be one of the most heavily used plant proteins by far is soy is very easy to grow. North America is actually, the US in particular, is the 3rd largest soy producer in the entire world. So we already grow it quite a bit. So it's easy to grow and it's very cost effective. So it depends on what kind of company you are. If you're a company that's looking to do quick vegan fast food nuggets or something where you're going for a lower price point, more of like a Walmart type company, then you might find yourself using soy more heavily because it allows you to have a lower price point. But if you're going for consumers that are more health conscious and interested in clean label, then you're going to find yourself probably gravitating towards the pea proteins, the fava beans or broad beans as they're known in Europe, and some of the other types of proteins because your consumers are going to be more interested in that. So I would say it really depends on what type of product you're making and what type of company you're growing.
Very interesting. Another question, are you seeing edible flowers making it out into the plant-based world?
Oh, edible flowers, interesting. So I certainly see them in a restaurant setting. Definitely had quite a lot of edible flowers at some of the Matthew Kenny restaurants that I've been to over the years. I can say from a consumer packaged goods setting, I have not seen any notable upticks in folks using that. I think edible flowers in particular, it would have to be what is their use case? You know, how are we making products out of edible flowers, and can this be packaged and put onto a shelf? I haven't seen any companies use them in mass yet. It's still been kind of more artisan style at restaurant settings, but nonetheless, I think people are getting really interested in novel types of proteins that they can eat and interesting health benefiting plants. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see that in some of the more health conscious types of products.
Yeah, interesting. I don't even know what the health benefits are of edible flowers, I guess.
You know, that's an area where I am not a nutritionist or a dietitian, but folks that are interested, nutritionfacts.org, I really recommend checking that out. So we can drop that into the chat. It's a nonprofit. They have amassed over 10,000 academic studies across the world, where they look at studies that are published in over 100 countries. So they translate all of the data all around the world at every single university, and they amalgamate it together to give you the best resource. They have tons of resources on other types of products that you can see in the plant-based space. Edible flowers, I bet you would be on there. It's the greatest database where you can look up the nutrition of plant-based products.
Oh, wow.
Or lack of nutrition as well.
Amazing. Quite another question for you. Thank you for that resource. I put it in the chat. Pam says, my husband is diabetic. How do I get him plant-based since most of the foods have beans and can be high in carbs?
That is a great question. So nutritionfacts.org has actually an entire resource portal on how you can start to get your type 2 diabetes under control by a plant-based diet. Another really great resource that I recommend Pam looking into is Healthy at Last. It's a book by the now mayor of New York City, Mayor Eric Adams. It's a story of how he was able to learn about a plant-based diet and how he reversed it himself. I think he lost something like 75 or 100 pounds, and he actually was going blind from his type 2 diabetes and was able to get his vision back. So it's a really good story of how he was able to do it, and the types of products that he was able to eat to achieve that.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. Eric Adams, for folks that aren't aware, he is the very first vegan mayor of New York City. I think the most powerful vegan mayor in the entire world. Really amazing story of his health journey you can look up.
Perfect. I just put that in the chat. Another question, do you think that the future is vegan rather than flexitarian, or what are your thoughts there?
I think that the future is folks eating a majority plant-based diet. We, of course, are seeing more and more folks that are going completely vegan. As I shared, it's upwards of 6% of Americans are now eating a completely plant-based diet. But I think as of right now, we're just going to see more and more people be flexitarian until we start to see generational shifts. We are seeing the highest rates of veganism with Generation Z, even Generation Alpha, which is the generation below Z. So that's the kids that are in elementary school right now. They are starting off as the very first generation that was born vegan. So when we have that shift, I would say in the next 10 to 15 years, I think we will go from a heavy flexitarian population to a lot more vegans because they'll have been raised vegan.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah. Gen Z is changing a lot. This is the very first generation, as I shared, where they learned about climate change and the connection to your diet. So eating to them is very different than millennials or Xers or boomers. They're not learning it as they're older. It's something that they're brought up thinking about.
Yep. So cool. And I know we have a couple of minutes left. So another question for you. What are some of your favorite high protein plant-based products for muscle growth?
Oh, okay. So I work with I have lots of vegan bodybuilder friends. So the first resource, the first resource that I'm going to say is, if you haven't checked out Game Changers, I gotta plug Game Changers. That is the amazing vegan bodybuilder and athlete documentary that's on Netflix. It came out a few years ago. It's produced by James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't think you could get a bigger name than Arnold Schwarzenegger to be on your fitness documentary. So they dive into the entire protein conversation on there. Highly recommend giving it a watch this weekend. Myself, I actually really eat a lot of, there's lupini beans. That is, as of right now, basically the highest mainstream plant protein that has protein per calorie in the entire world. So lupini beans are pretty popular in the EU, particularly Portugal, but they're now starting to make their way over to the United States. I also eat a lot of seitan. Seitan also has very high protein. So that's another product that you could take a look at. It is gluten-based, so you have to make sure that you're not a person that has any sort of gluten sensitivities. But if you are one of those people that can eat gluten, no problem. Seitan is a very popular bodybuilding food. And lupini is Lupini. So you can look up, there's a couple brands that are currently selling it at places like Sprouts and Whole Foods and Safeway, but they're starting to get more and more popular because it is the highest protein content per calorie of any plant-based protein.
Got it. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's good.
Last question for you. What about the use of pesticides? If you can't buy organic, is there a recommendation you have to clean off the chemicals from your fruits and vegetables as you transition more into a plant-based diet?
So one of the things that's really exciting, I can speak from an innovation perspective, but I am not a specialist in this space. So I can't speak directly to the best way to clean them off because this is not my forte. But I can tell you that there is so many new companies that are creating pesticide-free solutions right now that you're going to start to see on the marketplace in the next few years and months even. Lots of really cool, novel, plant-based ways that people can create different shells and things like that to put over packages so that we don't need to spray them down like with wax coatings and things that are all natural. There's a lot of innovation to start removing those types of sprays and additives. So.
Amazing. Well, I know we're at time. We're at 10:30. I'm going to plug again Vegan Women's Summit, especially because your super is joining you, Jennifer, there. So come see the both of us at the Vegan Women's Summit, April 8th in Los Angeles. Should be nice weather too. I'm excited to be there. And yes, Jenny has given us a very nice discount code for any of you who are attending our summit. You can come join us and attend. And I know that you said people from all over the world are coming. So even if you're in California, come join us.
Absolutely. I would love to have any of you, if you want to come explore the future of the plant-based space and all the amazing women that are leading it. The summit is open to men and women. We're about 80% female attendees, 20% male attendees. So everybody's welcome. We're going to have dozens of the coolest new plant-based beauty, food, fashion brands. You won't want to miss it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for your time. I know the chat has been going off. Everyone found this very interesting, so we appreciate it.
Great. Thanks very much. Have a good one.
You too.